Thanks everybody for coming. We're going to do 40 minutes of chatting, just the three of us, and then because so much of what we do is interactive, we want you all to have lots of smart questions later. We'll do 20 minutes of questions toward the end. It's funny because you're here at Sundance, and I feel like I spend most of my time on shuttles and in film screenings talking to people about how hard it is to make just one movie, you know, like how their whole life is built around that struggle. You two have somehow managed to make platforms that make storytelling possible, and that's really unique. So, Jeff, I thought I'd start with you. Why start a company like Participant? What's the initial thought behind that?
Thank you, Logan. You know, I grew up in a middle-class family in Canada, and we used to go camping, and there wasn't much to do except get tickled by my sister or read books. And so by the time I was 12 or 13, I had read authors like Orwell and Ayn Rand and James Michener and James Clavell, and all painting a picture of what the future of the world might look like. And it seemed pretty scary with overpopulation and these terrible new weapons and wars and diseases. And I wanted to get people involved in these issues. I thought I would do it by being a writer and writing stories that would get people to be immersed in these things that affect us all. With all deference to the writers in our crowd, I didn't think that was the best way to make a living. So I became an entrepreneur with the goal that at some point I'd be able to retire and start writing these stories.
As a writer, I think you made the right call.
And so, you know, years go by, I started a few businesses, and I was at Stanford Business School, and I made friends with this guy named Pierre Omidyar. Pierre came to me with this idea for what eventually became eBay. And, you know, with my diploma in hand, I said to Pierre, you know, that's a really stupid idea. You know, so we started working together, and in 1996, we both left our full-time jobs to start eBay together as a full-time company. We went public 2 years later, and all of a sudden, I had more resources than I could ever have dreamed of. And the idea of writing stories, I realized that for me it wasn't about the writing, it was about telling people about climate change and nuclear weapons and the rainforest and girls' education. And I figured what better way to do that than through movies and TV. And so about 10 years ago, I went down to LA with this wide-eyed dream to tell stories that were in the public interest. So it was all about topical issues that would make a difference for people today in a big way. And you know, got off to a great start. You know, I went around town talking to all the studio heads and explaining what we were trying to do. And some of them were like, oh, great, so you want to finance Legally Blonde 2? And I'm like, no, that's not it exactly.
Well, I feel like that's the impression. A lot of people who get into film after not being in the business, it seems like sometimes they just kind of want to be closer to celebrity, that's part of the idea.
Right, right. There's that. And for me, it was all about making a difference in the big issues in the world. And you know, there was a lot of encouragement. You know, people would say things like, you know, the streets of Hollywood are littered with the carcasses of people like you who think you're going to come to this town and make movies. No, I ran into some good people, and I would ask them what they were most proud of in their career, and invariably it was a project about foster care or the environment or something that they cared about. And I said, well, if there was a company that was making films about issues you cared about, would you be supportive? And so that's when the light bulbs went on. And in our first year, I made good friends with Alan Horn, who was the head of Warner Brothers at the time. And so our first 3 movies were with Warner's, Syriana, North Country, and Good Night and Good Luck.
I've heard of those.
So we got off to a good start.
So now, now a good start is putting it mildly. 10 years, I think, what is 36 Oscar nominations now with The Square, which is a terrific documentary about Arab Spring that just came out. And I thought, Joe, I'd love to just have you explain what HitRecord is. We were talking about this earlier, that it's such an innovative concept. It's got so many components of different kinds of storytelling that it can be a little difficult to describe. So if you were to describe how the pieces come together, maybe give me the big picture, and I'd love to hear you walk me through one of those specific examples. There's a short film in the first episode. You can download it it's already on YouTube for anybody watching this. And it's called First Stars. So maybe we could use that as an example of explaining the process behind HitRecord.
Sure. Well, the first thing I would say is that all of our pieces come together differently. Just based on what the material is or the story we're trying to tell, the methodology changes. But First Stars I See Tonight is a good example. So I'll just kind of tell you what the steps were as briefly as I can, because it was a long process. It started because we were doing an episode regarding the number 1. And I put out a request, meaning I make a video of myself that's like 2 minutes long, saying, okay, we're making a television show, and hopefully people have watched previous videos so they understand that we're making a television show, but I remind them. We're making a television show, and every episode's gonna have a theme. So I want ideas around the theme of the number 1. And in particular, how about, here's a question. Tell me a story about the first time, any kind of first time, the first time you did something, whatever it is. And so we got lots of contributions that come into our site for that. And this one young woman wrote this story about the first time she ever saw the stars. And she was, to make a long story short, she has this eye condition such that she can't see them, but her dad had an idea to get her a pair of night vision goggles out of a Russian military surplus catalog. And so when she was 16 years old, she saw the stars for the first time in her life. And when I read that, I thought, that's brilliant. Who would have ever thought of that? I could have hired a team of professional screenwriters to write me a short film on the theme of first times, and no one would have come up with that. So I set about trying to figure out how to turn that into a short film. So the first thing I did was I took her writing and I took a pass through it and edited it, changing some of the phrasing and also kind of focusing the story. And then I put that script, that kind of revised piece of writing, back up on our site and make another request, saying like, okay, here we've got our story on the theme of first times. I want voiceover artists to do readings of this text. And then we get lots of contributions for that, hundreds. And the one we picked was this young woman in Scotland, actually, and the story's not set in Scotland. But that's how these, kind of details emerge sort of organically. Yeah. And she recorded the voiceover on her phone, by the way. Wow. But she just had a great quality to her voice and
her
great
voice
cadence.
Is terrific.
Yeah, and she told the story really, really well. And so once we had that voiceover, the next thing we did was I got together with a couple actors, professional actors. HitRecord's always sort of a mix between people who are established professionals and people who are equally talented but who are not established professionals. And in front of a green screen, we shot these two actors sort of acting out the story in time with the voiceover. And we did, a whole shot list, and I worked with my director of photography, et cetera, and shot it all in front of a green screen. And then we put that cut up on the site of just the two actors in front of a green screen with the voiceover and say, now it's time for, okay, another request. Here's the next step. I want to draw in the world around them. So we make a list of all the different items. We need these people's house. We need the truck that they're driving in. We need the goggles that she puts on. We need the instructions. We need, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A whole big request list. And the site sort of helps organize this. And all these different artists start drawing and contributing these elements. And then one particular artist in the community who is not someone I've ever physically met, but just a really talented animator who's been doing great stuff on our site for years. He goes by 1242 on the site.
I love the usernames. I mean, that's actually one of the best parts of the show. I think these incredible names that come along.
Yeah. So he and I worked together to, and then he did certainly the bulk of the work sort of with my direction, taking all these different illustrations and putting them into After Effects, which is a program where you can, it's like an animated Photoshop kind of thing, and building the world around them. The music also came together collaboratively, where it was, put out another request for the music, et cetera. So it's sort of this constant back and forth where I, as the director, we call me a director, and it is very much modeled after what a director does on a traditional film set. The difference being that on a traditional film set, you hire your crew first, and then everybody does the work, and everyone's bringing their ideas, and a good director is someone who can inspire and bring out the best contributions from a wide variety of the artists who are contributing to a film. On HitRecord, we don't hire people first. We sort of open the door and say, here's what has to get done. Who wants to try to do it?
Yeah.
And then I sort of give direction and pick who the elements that I think are going to make it come together the best.
Yeah. And right now there's 300,000 members on the site. Is that right?
Yeah.
It's incredible. And so for a project like that, I imagine for each of the visual elements, you've got a lot of stuff coming back at you. Different people trying it. And you mentioned the other day that it can be difficult, kind of having to say no to some of these people, right?
It's true. And while I'm brutal when it comes to picking what actually goes on the television show, it's really important to me that there's a lot of encouragement, because there's a value in going ahead and drawing that picture or writing that story, even if it doesn't get on television. And that goes back to sort of the origins of where HitRecord came from, and where a lot of what my brother is very much was about, really more than the finished product. He just really liked getting people to try it.